In 2026, the world found itself staring over a cliff into a brand new kind of war. This is the story of the US-Iran conflict, a war fought not just with missiles and jets, but with terrifying threats, high-stakes gambles, and some incredibly close calls. And it all really came to a head with this one single world-shaking quote from the American president. I mean, you just don't hear language like this in diplomacy. This was a threat of total annihilation. And it set the stage for a conflict that felt like something out of a movie. So that's the big question we're going to dig into. How did we get here? How did a regional dispute explode into the brink of total war in just a little over 50 days? Let's unpack it. All right, so let's jump right into the most intense day of this whole crisis. The day the entire world was basically holding its breath. The date was April 7th. President Trump had laid down the law. Iran had to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, which is this absolutely critical channel for global oil. As the final hours of that deadline were ticking away, the rhetoric just went off the charts, to a level we really haven't seen in modern times. And when I say off the charts, I mean it. The president didn't just threaten military sites. He said he would destroy the entire Iranian civilization. He then used this incredibly dehumanizing language, which immediately prompted Amnesty International to issue a warning about a potential threat of genocide. You know, the world took this dead seriously. Embassies were scrambling, sending out alerts, telling their citizens to find shelter now. Everyone was bracing for impact. But how did we even get to this point? Well, the 50 days leading up to that threat were just a steady drumbeat of deadly escalation, and one key moment that completely changed the game. Behind all the politics and the threats, you have to remember the real human cost. In just a little over 50 days, this conflict had already claimed the lives of more than 4,000 people in Iran and Lebanon, along with 39 Israeli and American soldiers. And those aren't just statistics. That's over 7,000 families shattered, not to mention the millions more who had to flee their homes. But believe it or not, the human cost could have been so much worse. The escalation hit its most terrifying peak right here, with American and Israeli forces conducting bombing runs dangerously close to Bushehr, Iran's only working nuclear power plant. They dropped 4 bombs nearby. I mean, the stakes here were astronomical. A direct hit could have triggered a disaster on the scale of Chernobyl, poisoning the entire Gulf region. Just listen to what Qatar's prime minister warned. A breach would mean no water, no fish, nothing. A complete environmental and human wipeout. And all the while, the U.S. was just ratcheting up the pressure. They issued not 1, not 2, but 4 separate deadlines for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. In Iran, they ignored every single one. It was a clear act of defiance that just kept pushing both sides closer and closer to the edge. Then, on April 3rd, something happened that nobody saw coming. The whole narrative of American invincibility just got blown apart. Iran shot down a highly advanced U.S. F-15E fighter jet. This completely undermined President Trump's constant claims of total air dominance. And this single event kicked off a dramatic and very risky new chapter in this war. So the downing of that jet triggered this incredible rescue mission deep behind enemy lines. A mission that, as it turns out, was way more costly than the White House wanted anyone to know. Okay, so picture this. The rescue mission was a real-life thriller. The CIA started by putting out fake stories that the crew was already safe, just to throw the Iranians off the scent. Meanwhile, the downed pilot, who was injured, somehow managed to climb to 7,000 feet and get out a 3-word radio message. The CIA pinpointed his location, and then the elite of the elite, Delta Force and Navy SEALs, went in, with U.S. warplanes lighting up the area to keep Iranian forces back while they pulled him out. Now, here's the part of the story you probably didn't hear in the official press conferences. Yeah, the airman was saved, which is amazing, but that mission had a heavy price tag. An A-10 Warthog went down, 2 Black Hawk helicopters took hits, and 2 transport planes were damaged. So while it was a success, it wasn't exactly a clean getaway. So you've got this insane escalation, this extreme rhetoric, a high-stakes rescue. The world was absolutely preparing for the worst. And then something happened that no one, and I mean no one, saw coming. With literally an hour and a half left on the clock before President Trump's final deadline expired, a ceasefire was announced. Iran and the U.S. just hit the brakes and agreed to a 2-week pause, pulling the entire world back from the brink of disaster.
And get this, the mediator who pulled it off was just as surprising as the ceasefire itself. It wasn't the UN or some European power, it was Pakistan. Turns out they had set up this direct back channel between their army chief and President Trump, and they used it to broker the whole deal. But that incredible sense of global relief, it was really, really short-lived. The deal, which was obviously put together in a huge hurry, almost immediately started to fall apart because of confusion, different interpretations, and one massive deal breaker. The first crack appeared right away. Pakistan announced that the deal would protect Lebanon. But then, just hours later, Israel launched its deadliest bombing run on Lebanon yet. And both Israel and the U.S. vice president came out and said, nope, Lebanon was never part of the deal. So right from the get-go, this truce was on shaky ground. And that confusion over Lebanon, well, it was really a symptom of a much bigger problem. When they finally got to the formal peace talks in Islamabad, everything collapsed over this one single issue. Iran offered to pause its nuclear program for 5 years. The U.S. demanded 20, and neither side was willing to budge. End of story. So with the peace talks totally dead, the situation just spiraled into chaos. President Trump announced a U.S. naval blockade of Iranian ports, but Iran was already trying to blockade the strait. So you ended up with this bizarre double blockade with both the Iranian and U.S. navies trying to control the same piece of water. The result? Total chaos for global shipping and a massive, massive risk of a direct shooting match. And that, believe it or not, brings us right up to the present day in this conflict. The ceasefire is ending, the talks have failed, and the whole situation is more dangerous and unpredictable than ever. So, as that 2-week ceasefire officially expires today, we're left with a bunch of urgent, terrifying, unanswered questions. Can some last-minute deals save the peace? And hey, even if the US and Iran shake hands, will their allies, like Israel, actually accept it? But the biggest question of all is, how long is this destruction going to last? And what lessons, if any, have we learned?